Well, welcome to episode 20 of 10-Minute Record Reviews, and this time we're going to talk about the Rolling Stones' 1978 album, Some Girls. And I've got the first Canadian pressing here for 1978. Interestingly, in the early pressings in 78, and I'll just show you the inner sleeve here, had actual pictures of actual celebrities on the inner sleeve. When the actual celebrities who were still alive, who were pictured here, got wind of this, they and their lawyers took some offense, and so in all later pressings, the Stones were forced to remove those. So it's that's kind of a fun little thing for that particular pressing. So what to expect from this? Well, for the Stones, this isn't the end of the Stones, but it's kind of the beginning of the end of the Stones, and that this is part of their final sort of that final flourish of a trilogy of albums with Some Girls, with Emotional Rescue and Tattoo You, and after that, I mean, I know there are some dissenters, but I'm not a fan of really anything that happens after or is released after 1981. And at that point, you know, and by the mid '80s, they've gone from being a band whose new music is important to being a band which is basically a traveling jukebox touring band at that point, with the greatest respect to Stones fans. But this album is a contender, I think, for the greatest Stones record ever. And there's some pretty stiff competition. There's lots of people who love Sticky Fingers or Exile on Main Street or Beggar's Banquet or Let It Bleed. This, I think, has to be considered in the same breath as those albums. And the sound of this album is the Stones being jolted back into relevance after the, you know, as the punk era has rolled out, and you know, from the kind of the lassitude and sort of navel gazing stuff that was happening with Goat's Head Soup and all, and It's Only Rock and Roll and their mid '70s albums, which were all about resting in their laurels. They're not resting in their laurels here. This album is full of energy, full of inventiveness, and it's a wonderful listen. So the build up to this, Keith had been in trouble for the whole previous year regarding his heroin bust in Toronto. Ronnie was still kind of bedding in as a new member, which was a great thing because the Stones had lost, for really silly reasons, frankly, Mick Taylor out of the band. But in a good move, brought Ronnie Wood in, and not only is Ronnie a great guitarist, he's also a great bass player. He plays slide guitar, he plays pedal steel, and added huge amounts to the band. But he was still kind of the new guy at this point. So really, this album is Mick driving the bus, and sometimes that doesn't end well. But in this case, it really was a good thing. You can tell this because of the influence of, you know, some disco and dance music. There's a lot more of aggression here. That you can, although there are no punk songs per se, thank God, on here. Because I wouldn't want to hear the Stones trying to pull that off. They tried to pull almost everything else off, and not always well, sometimes well. But there's an aggression here, an attempt to be relevant. You can really feel it. There's also lots of different little pieces of reflections on or allusions to New York life, which of course Mick was living at the time. The other thing is that the early '70s albums for the Stones had been full of musical collaborators. Billy Preston, the best known. Those people are largely gone. This is essentially the 5 members of the Stones playing, with the one sort of notable exception of the guy who plays harmonica on Miss You, a guy called Sugar Blue, supposedly Jagger found in playing harmonica on the street in Paris. And so, but generally, there's the 5 Stones playing. There's a rich vein of creativity here, and lyrically, this is fantastic. Some people say it's kind of hard to believe, you know, Mick when he's singing these sort of gritty, edgy songs when we all know at this point he's a New York party monster. But even so, lyrically, this is an excellent album. So music, side 1, Miss You. Fantastic disco song. It's exactly what it is, no more, no less. This is making his I Love New York persona. He does this incredible job of portraying the kind of the hedonism of the sort of the New York party, Studio 54 lifestyle. It doesn't reference that specifically, but just in that sense of you know, a window into what life is like. Followed by a great up-tempo rocker, When the Whip Comes Down. Temptations cover, which is one of my favorite tracks in the album, Just My Imagination Running Away With Me, is a great vocal delivery by Mick here, I think. Some Girls, very well established as one of the naughtier songs. the Stones ever produced, but musically an excellent song. There's no two ways about that. And then closes out with Lies, which is I think probably the weakest song on the album. Interestingly, all the songs in this album have been played live by the Stones at one point or another, and there's not very many Stones albums of which that's true. Lies was only played a few times, however. They played it while they were touring behind this record, and then ditched it in subsequent tours for a good reason, because it's just not the best song in the world. Side 2 starts with a song which divides opinion. I personally love it, and that's "Faraway Eyes," which along with well, I guess there's a few other contenders, but certainly is a contender for best Stones country song. Yeah, the lyrics are a little bit cheesy, but I just have a very soft spot for this song, and it has, I would say, one of the most hummable choruses that you're ever going to hear. And whatever you think of the rest of the song, that chorus is just fantastic, and there's a lot of wit in the song too. Followed by "Respectable," another high tempo song, a sort of a riff on the high and mighty and how they weren't always where they are today. Then a Keith song, "Before They Make Me Run," which is a reflection on his troubles with heroin and on the bust and so on. Very personal, very lovely. Very lovely song. It has the best Keith lyric, I think, of all time, which is "Wasn't looking too good, but I was feeling real well," which is all about Keith. Apparently, Keith wrote and recorded the song in a 5-day period during which he didn't sleep. But you never know. Then "Beast of Burden," and although Keith doesn't sing, here's Mick singing. Keith is the star of this with the incredible riff that just pulses all the way through the song. A lot of ad-lib here by Jagger, and again, this is one of those songs which makes a lot of people's top 10 Stones songs. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Very sensuous, sort of pleading kind of a song. Fantastic rhythm section, so great. And then we're on to "Shattered," which is not like really any other songs that the Stones ever did. It's got a wonderful performance by Ronnie Wood on bass, not Bill Wyman, and Ronnie Wood sits on this one, and maybe that's why the song is so tight. But it's, again, classic sort of Jagger reflections on New York, just super infectious and a wonderful song. So overall, 4.5 stars for this album. I mark it down just a little bit for "Lies," which I really always skip over when I play it. This to me is the high water mark of the Stones' late 70s and early 80s work. It's an essential album, I think, in anyone's music collection.